Hi everyone, in today's lesson we'll be discussing ways to write equations of lines. Linear equations can be written in a number of forms: standard form, slope-intercept form, and point-slope form. The two forms that we'll be working with today are the slope-intercept form and point-slope form. Now you're probably most familiar with slope-intercept form from your previous math class. Usually when we say y equals mx plus b, people know or at least recognize that. In order to write an equation in slope-intercept form, you need to know those two things, slope and the y-intercept. Now, in our first example, it says write an equation in slope-intercept form. So our goal is to get y equals mx plus b for the line pictured in the graph. And if you take a look at the graph, the first thing that we want to find is the slope. So I'm going to choose my 2 points, and I see I have 2 nice points highlighted. So going from the point on the left, I would go up 2 and then to the right 3. So that gives us a line that has a slope of positive 2/3. Now the y-intercept is the point where the line crosses the y-axis, and this is my y-axis right here. This would be the x-axis. So our y-intercept just happens to be positive 2. All right, so we're going to put the 2 in for b, and we're going to put the 2/3 in for our slope. So our final equation will be y equals 2/3 x plus 2. So again, your steps are to find the slope, identify the y-intercept or find the y-intercept, and then finally, third step, write the equation. In y equals mx plus b form. And that's it. Okay, that first one was pretty easy. We had a graph. We just had to identify the slope and the y-intercept from the graph, and then we had to plug those two things into y equals mx plus b. Number 2 is fairly easy also. It says write an equation in slope-intercept form. So the goal is y equals mx plus b. And it says we're writing this equation for a line with a slope of -2. That means m equals -2. And the y-intercept of 5. So b is equal to 5. All right, so what we're going to do is take and plug those two things in where we see them in our equation. So y equals mx, we're going to put in -2. In front of the x, you have to keep the x there, plus b, we're going to put in positive 5 where we see b. And there's our equation. That's all there is to it for that one. Okay, taking a step up in our level of difficulty, in example 3 it says write an equation of a line passing through 6,2 and 8,3. Okay, when it says write an equation of the line, then you can use any of the forms, and we're going to stick with y equals mx plus b. So here are the steps we're going to take. Number 1, find the slope. So this is your point x1, y1. This can be x2, y2. And we're going to plug those 2 points into our slope formula. y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So we'll take and do 3 minus 2 and divide it by 8 minus 6. 3 minus 2 gives us positive 1. 8 minus 6 gives us 2. So our slope is 1/2. All right, so we have found our slope so far. All right, step 2. We're going to do something a little different here. We're going to use point-slope form. All right, so point-slope form is y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. Point-slope form basically comes from the formula for slope that has been multiplied out. Okay, so the slope has been multiplied by x2 minus x1, just like when we have a proportion, how we cross multiply. Okay, when you use point slope form, you're going to take one of your points, in this case x1 and y1, you're going to plug in the x1 right here, you're going to plug in the y1 right here, and of course we're going to plug in our slope for m. So watch what happens when I plug those numbers in. I'll have y minus y1, which is 2, equals our slope of 1/2 times x minus x1, which is 6. All right, now from here on out, it's just rewriting. Okay, so we are going to distribute this 1/2 into the parentheses. We're going to keep this y minus 2 the same. When I distribute, I get 1/2 x minus 1/2 times 6. So do that math out. We have y minus 2 equals 1/2 x minus 3. And then finally, to get it into y equals mx plus b form, take and add 2 to both sides. So here it goes to 0, so we are just left with y. We have 1/2 x. Negative 3 plus 2 is negative 1. All right, so y equals 1/2 x minus 1. Now what you can do to check your work is to plug in your x's, like plug in 6 and verify that you get 2 as a result. Plug in 8 and verify that you get 3 as a result for y. Okay, so the most challenging of them all for today says write an equation of the line with an x-intercept of 3 and a y-intercept of 6. Well, right away, I want you to put a little note that b is equal to 6 because that's our y-intercept. So b is equal to 6. So thinking about our goal of having an equation in slope-intercept form, y equals mx plus b, so far we have y equals mx plus 6. All right, so we're halfway there. We have to find the slope. Okay. First thing I'd like you to do is write the intercepts as points. Okay, so what I mean by that is the x-intercept would be the point 3, 0, because if it's an x-intercept, the y value is 0. The y-intercept would be 0, 6. All right, step 2, find the slope. So the slope would be 6 minus 0 divided by 0 minus 3. So I'm doing x1, y1, x2, y2. All right, 6 minus 0 is 6. 0 minus 3 is negative 3. That gives us negative 2 for our slope. So to finish off our equation, we're going to plug in negative 2 for m, and we have y equals negative 2x plus 6. Okay, that ends the first part of the lesson, and you can go and work on the homework, like the first half of the homework, or you can continue on with the video and try the whole homework assignment. Okay, in part 2 of writing equations of lines, we're going to see a few little twists and turns. But the end result, or the end goal, is still to get an equation in slope-intercept form. In example 5, we're asked to write an equation of a line that is parallel to 2x plus 3y equals 11 and passes through the point 9, negative 1. And I'm just going to label that as x1, y1. All right, just remember that parallel lines have the same slope. And that's our first thing that we have to do, is find the slope of this line. Well, this equation is written in standard form, so we want to rewrite it, or we solve for y. So take and move the 2x to the other side by subtracting it, and we get 3y equals negative 2x plus 11. And then take and divide every term by 3. So everybody's going to play. So divide by 3, divide by 3, divide by 3. And we get y equals negative 2/3 x plus 11/3. Okay, the whole goal of that process was to identify the slope. Okay, so remember, if we're going to write the equation of a line, we need at least 2 clues. So we have our slope, m equals negative 2/3, and we have a point, 9, negative 1. When we have a slope and a point, it's really easy to use point-slope form. Y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. So I'm going to highlight where we're plugging points in. We're going to plug in y1 right there. We're going to plug in our slope for m right there. And we're going to plug in our x1 value right here. Okay, so a few arrows going around. So I have y minus my y1, which is negative 1. We'll clean that up in a minute. Equals m, that's our slope, negative 2/3, times x minus x1, which is 9. Okay, so once you plug in everything, now you want to simplify. Y minus a negative 1 becomes y plus 1. Negative 2/3 times x is negative 2/3 x. And negative 2/3 times negative 9, we're going to have to simplify. Okay, so when I do that, I'm going to keep this y plus 1 for a second. Negative 2/3 x. A negative times a negative is a positive. And 2/3 times 9 simplifies to be positive 6. And that's because it would become 18 over 3. And 18 divided by 3 is 6. Finally, subtract 1 from both sides to get 5. And we have y equals negative 2/3 x plus 5. Okay. All right, in example 6, it says find the equation of the line that is perpendicular to y equals negative 1/4 x plus 5 over 6 and passes through 2, 7. So 2, 7 will be x1, y1. Perpendicular lines have slopes that are negative reciprocals. So I'm just going to make a note. Slopes are negative reciprocals. Okay, in the simplest terms possible, you're going to take this slope, you're going to change the sign, and you're going to flip it over. So our new slope will be 4 over 1, or just 4. So the slope is negative, our new slope has to have the opposite sign, and it has to be the reciprocal. All right, so we have m equals 4, and we have our point, so we want to go with point-slope form. Y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. All right, so just keep in mind where we're plugging things in. In place of y1, we're going to put 7. In place of x1 over here, we're going to put 2. And in place of m, we're going to put 4. All right, so what it looks like will be y minus 7 equals 4 times x minus 2. All right, so keep that y minus 7 for a second, and then distribute the 4. 4 times x is 4x. 4 times negative 2 is negative 8. And then all we need to do is take and add that 7 to both sides. All right, negative 8 plus 7 is negative 1. So our final equation is y equals 4x minus 1. And that's your final answer. Okay, the last two are actually really quick, but they sometimes cause us a little bit of confusion. So I'm going to draw a little graph here. It says in example 7, write the equation of the horizontal line through 4, negative 3. So this is the point 4, negative 3 right here, okay? If we're writing the equation of a horizontal line, it would look like this. All right, in other words, you'd think, oh, it's flat, and it is. All right, so we're going to put a bunch of points on this line. This point right here would be 0, negative 3. Our given point was 4, negative 3. This point way over here could be -4, -3. All right, if we keep going, and this is, say, 8, -3, what you start to notice is that the y value is always the same, okay? Now, for a horizontal line, the equation is always y equals a number. And in this case, y is equal to -3. And that's all you do, right? You are stating for this line, y is always equal to -3. Another thing to point out is that the slope of a horizontal line is 0. The y-intercept is -3. So even if you did try to write it in y equals mx plus b form, you would end up with y equals 0x minus 3. And that would just simplify to y equals -3. Okay? So equations of horizontal lines should be really easy. It's y equals a number, and it's whatever the y value of your point is. Okay, similar to writing equations of horizontal lines, we're also going to write an equation of a vertical line. So if we go back to that same point, so x-axis, y-axis, right 4, and then down 3. So this is our point again, 4, -3. But this time we're writing the equation of the vertical line through that point. And if we again find a few points on that line, this would be 4, 0. This could be 1, 2, 3, 4, 3. This could be 4, 5. All right, so unlike horizontal lines, for vertical lines, the slope is undefined. And we can't plug a word into the slope formula or plug a word into our equation like y equals mx plus b form. So what we have to keep in mind is that the equation of a vertical line is x equals a number. And it's just going to be x is equal to 4. So basically with a vertical line, you're saying, hey, on this line, x is always the same. It's always positive 4. Okay. All right, that's it. Good luck on finishing up the homework.